Hello again. Welcome back to week 16 of year 5 of the Religious Education Initiative. This is day 2. We're continuing with our read through of this strange and beautiful little story of Joseph and Aseneth. So last time we saw the man from heaven show Aseneth a miracle as he made the sign of the cross in the honeycomb from which he had given heavenly food to Aseneth. And from the honeycomb there came forth marvelous bees, clothed in brilliant white and crowned with crowns. And they made a honeycomb in her mouth and were nourished from it until the man from heaven took them away into heaven. So these are the saints of the church who are nourished by the body and blood of the Lord in the church, the city of refuge, and this is very much an allegorical mode. But then the man from heaven took the bees away. He sent them into heaven, and he touched the honeycomb, and fire consumed it all, but it didn't harm the table it was resting on, showing that this is a miraculous fire. And then he left her and returned to heaven himself, leaving her to marvel that she had been visited by God himself. This time we will see her return to her household, to her family, and prepare to meet Joseph once again. And as Aseneth was still saying these things about how she was unworthy to have seen God, behold, a young man from Potiphar's servant's staff rushed in and said, Behold, Joseph, the powerful one of God, is coming to us today, for a forerunner of his is standing at the gates of our court. And Aseneth hurried and called her foster father, the steward of her house, and said to him, Hurry and make the house ready, and prepare a good dinner, because Joseph, the powerful one of God, is coming to us today. And her foster father saw her, and behold, her face had fallen from the affliction and the weeping and the fasting of the 7 days. And he was distressed and wept, and he took her right hand and kissed it, and said, What have you, my child, because your face has fallen so much? And Aseneth said to him, My head is stricken with heavy pain, and the sleep kept away from my eyes, and therefore my face has fallen. And her foster father went away, and prepared the house and the dinner. And Aseneth remembered the man from heaven and his commandment, and she hurried, and entered her second chamber, where the chests containing her ornaments were, and opened her great coffer, and brought out her first robe, the wedding robe, like lightning in appearance, and she dressed in it. And she girded a golden and royal girdle around herself, which was made of precious stones. And she put golden bracelets on her fingers, and on her feet golden buskins, and precious ornaments she put around her neck, in which innumerable costly and precious stones were fastened. And a golden crown she put on her head, and on that crown in front of her brow was a great sapphire stone, and around the great stone were 6 costly stones. And with a veil she covered her head like a bride, and she took a scepter in her hand. And Aseneth remembered the words of her foster father, because he had said to her, Your face has fallen. And she sighed, and was much distressed, and said, Woe is me, the humble one, because my face has fallen. Joseph will see me and despise me. And she said to her foster sister, Bring me pure water from the spring, and I will wash my face. And she brought her pure water from the spring, and poured it into the basin. And Aseneth leaned over to wash her face, and saw her face in the water. And it was like the sun, and her eyes were like a rising morning star, and her cheeks like fields of the Most High, and on her cheeks there was red like a sun of man's blood, and her lips were like a rose of life coming out of its foliage, and her teeth like fighting men lined up for a fight, and the hair of her head was like a vine in the paradise of God prospering in its fruits, and her neck like an all variegated cypress, and her breasts like the mountains of the Most High God. And when Aseneth saw herself in the water, she was amazed at the sight, and rejoiced with great joy, and did not wash her face, for she said, Perhaps I will wash off this great beauty. And her foster father came to say to her, Everything is prepared as you have commanded. And when he saw her, he was alarmed, and stood speechless for a long time, and was filled with great fear, and fell at her feet, and said, What is this, my mistress? And what is this great and wonderful beauty? At last the Lord God of heaven has chosen you as a bride for his firstborn son, Joseph. Okay, so this is kind of weird to us. It doesn't make a lot of sense immediately. She comes out of her room, she's been fasting, she's been nourished, she's been fed by the man from heaven, but she comes out, and her steward, her foster father, says, you look a mess. She looks like she's been lying in ashes, hasn't eaten, has been crying. She doesn't look good. She says, oh, she remembers that the man from heaven told her to dress herself in her bridal garment. So she goes into her chamber. She finds all of her bridal clothes, like what she dressed herself in before, but now she's been commanded to do so. And then she says, I better wash my face. But when the water comes in, she sees her face, and she doesn't look sad. She doesn't look like her face is fallen. She looks magnificently beautiful. A beauty that is, and here we begin to interpret, clearly not her own. This is not something that she has accomplished by any arts. This is not something, it's not like she put on makeup, washed her face, tightened her pores, whatever one does with cosmetics. I don't know. I don't wear them, right? But she hasn't done any of this. This is effectively, I think we should interpret, this is the gift of God, so that in her humility, in her humiliation, in her obedience now, because it happens after she obeys the commandment to adorn herself like a bride, even though she doesn't feel ready, she is unprepared and unworthy, but in obedience, in humility, now her beauty is shown forth. The beauty of the Lord, the glory of God is shining forth in her, not in her greatness and pride, but in her humility. This is the same kind of thing that St. Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians, when he talks about we don't preach ourselves, we preach Jesus Christ. God has commanded the light to shine out of the darkness, like Aseneth, her face is fallen, she's weak, and he has shined in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. And he says, but we have this treasure, this precious thing, in earthen vessels, in broken, humbled bodies, so that the great power may be shown to be of God and not of us. So we're troubled on every side, not distressed. Anyway, I put it in the notes, but the point is, Aseneth is shown forth to be beautiful in her humility and her faithfulness to God, and true beauty always is found there. So next week, I think we will see her actually meet Joseph. But for now, we'll wrap up, and God bless you all. We'll see you shortly for day 3.